Hey everybody, in today's video I'm going to walk you through creating a to-do list app using React. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Alright, let's do this everybody. We'll need to create a new JSX file. Going to our source folder, we will right-click, New File. This component will be named to-do-list.jsx. This will be a function-based component. Function, to-do-list, no parameters. Then let's be sure to export it, because if I don't do it now, I'm going to forget. Export default to-do list. We will be using the useState hook. We should import that. Import React, use object destructuring. I would like just the useState hook from its location of React. We do need to return something. For now, we're just going to return a fragment. Going back to our app component, we need to import our to-do list component. Import to-do list from its relative file path, /to-do list.jsx. We will return one to-do list component. And we are ready to move on. Within our to-do list component, we will have two state variables. Const tasks. Tasks will be an array of strings. We need a setter function for tasks. Set tasks equals the useState hook. The initial state of tasks is going to be an empty array, but eventually we're going to populate this array with strings, one string for each task to add. And we will create a state variable for a new task. New task is whatever we're currently editing with a text box. We will be adding our new task to our array of tasks. Then we need a setter function for new task. Set new task equals useState. The initial state will be an empty string. Let's declare the functions we'll need throughout this program. We will need a function to handle input change. There will be one parameter, an event. This function is for our text box when we type in something. We'll need a function to add a task. Function add task. There will be no parameters. Function delete task. There will be one parameter, an index. An index of the list item we would like to delete. Let me scroll down. A function to move task up. There is one parameter, an index. What is the index of the list item we would like to move up within our list? And a function to move task down. We will also accept an index. Okay, and these are the functions we'll need. Until we fill these in, I'm going to close these functions. Okay, now we'll go to our return statement. We have a lot of HTML elements to add. We'll begin with a div element. Our div element will have a class name of to-do list. Within this div element, we'll create an h1 element for a heading. The heading will be to-do list. After this h1 element, I'll create another div element. Within this div element, I will create an input element. This will be a self-closing tag. Just for readability, I'm going to place each attribute on a new line. We have a lot of attributes to write. I will set the type of this input element to be text. I'm going to zoom in so you can see it more easily. I'll add a placeholder of enter a task, ... Enter a task. I will set the value of this text box to be some JavaScript. Our new task state variable. This one. When we type within this input element, we will use the onChange event handler equal to a callback to a JavaScript function, a callback to handle input change. We'll fill in this function since we're here. Going to handle input change, we will use the setter for our new task. Access our event parameter, access its target, access its value. So when we type within the text box, it should change. Eat breakfast. If we didn't set the new task, and we type within the text box, we don't see the text. It doesn't change. That's why we need this function. So we can see the text when we write within the input element. Let's scroll back down to the bottom. After our input element, we will create a button element with text of add to add a task. For the class name of the button, we'll set the class name attribute of the button to be add_button, add-button. I will set the onClick event handler equal to a JavaScript callback. We will call the function of add_task. Now, temporarily, until we apply some CSS, I'll write a few tasks within our array. Just temporarily. Let's say our first task is to eat breakfast, take a shower, and walk the dog. After our div element, we'll create an ordered list with a pair of OL tags. Within this pair of OL tags, we'll be embedding some JavaScript. We have a lot to write. We're going to take all of our tasks and use the map method. We will create a list item element for each task, for each element within this array. We'll use the map method. We're provided with two parameters, the current element and the index of the current element, but I'll rename this element parameter as task, so it's more easily understandable. Within the map method, we will use an arrow function. What would we like to do with each task? I'll put this on a new line. We will create a list item element. So currently we have 3 list item elements. Now React wants us to add a key for each element, so it can more easily keep track of each element. With the opening list item tag, I will set the key attribute equal to the current index. Within the list item element, I will create a span element for some text. The class name for this span element will be text. This will be for the text of each list item element. Within the span element, we will include the current task. We have 3 tasks: eat breakfast, take a shower, walk the dog. After our span element, we'll create a button element. This button element will be for a delete button, to delete this task. This button will have a class name of delete-button. I will set the onClick event handler equal to a callback to delete task. Now we do have to pass in a parameter, the index of the list item we would like to delete. Delete task, pass in the current index. With a callback, if you add a set of parentheses right away, when we pass in an argument, this will call the function right away. Instead, we will use an arrow function to prevent that. Let's copy this button, paste it. We'll now create a move up button to move a task up if we need to change the priority. The text on the button will be up. But you know what? I like to use emojis. I'll use a pointer finger. I think that would be more fun. The class name will be move button. OnClick will be set equal to a callback to move task up. We'll be passing in the current index. Make sure that this is an arrow function too. Let's copy this button again, paste it. This next button will be for move task down. We can either write down for the text, or I'll use an emoji for fun. Down. All right, and that is all the HTML that we need. Before we fill in these functions, let's apply some CSS to everything. I'm zoomed in to 100% currently. Let's select the container of to-do list, this div element. So this has a class of to-do list. Let's change the font family to be Arial with a backup of sans serif. Text align center is center the text and add a little bit of margin to the top of 100 pixels. Let's select our H1 element Increase the font size to 4 rem. Then we'll select all buttons. Increase the font size to 1.7 rem. Set the font weight to be bold. Add some padding around each button. Padding 10 pixels by 20 pixels. Set the font color to be white. We'll add some background color pretty soon. Remove the border, border none. Border radius to smooth the corners by 5 pixels. Change our cursor to be a pointer when we hover over a button. That does appear to work. We'll add a transition effect when we hover over a button. Let's change the background color and have it ease after 0.5 seconds. Let's work on the background color of the buttons next. We'll select the class of add button. Add-button. Pick a background color. I'll pick green, but I will use HSL values. I've already pre-picked a color. Now, when I hover my cursor over the Add button, access the hover pseudo class, take the lightness, make it 10% darker. Let's do this with the Delete button. Let's copy what we have, paste it. For the next set, change Add to Delete. I'll pick a red color. Again, I've already picked some values. And when I hover, make the shade 10% darker. And the move buttons. I'll make the move buttons blue. Again, I've already picked a color. Not bad. It looks like with the transition, I forgot to add S for seconds. That's better. We'll work on the input element next. So after our buttons, let's select our input element. We'll select all input elements that have a type attribute of text. I'll increase the font size to 1.6 rem. Add a little bit of padding, 10 pixels. Add a border, 2 pixels solid. Pick a color. I'll set the lightness to be 80%, but lower the alpha to 50%. Not bad. Border radius to smooth the corners, 5 pixels. And for the font color, let's find something. I'll just lower the alpha to 50%. Here's the text currently. I'm happy with that. We'll work on the list items. We'll begin with our ordered list. Remove all padding. Padding 0. So that should delete the numbers. We will style each list item element. Increase the font size to 2 rem. Set the font weight to be bold. Add some padding of 15 pixels. Change the background color. I'll set the lightness to 97%. Add some margin to the bottom of each list item of 10 pixels to separate each of them. Add a border, 3 pixels solid. Pick a color. For the lightness, I'll pick 85%. And the alpha down to 75%. Border radius to round the corners, 5 pixels. For the elements within each list item, I'll use Flexbox. Display flex to align everything. And align items center. I would like the text to take up as much space as possible. So I will select the class of text, use flexbox, set it to 1. Flex1, it's a shortcut for these 3 CSS properties: flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis. This is more advanced flexbox. If you set an element to have flex1, you're applying these 3 properties. Basically speaking, that element should take up as much space as possible and grow and shrink with the size of the web browser. So all these buttons are going to be pushed to the right because the text wants to take up as much space as possible. Okay, now we will select the class of our delete button and move button. These 2 sets of buttons. Let's add some padding. 8 pixels by 12 pixels. Increase the font size to 1.4 rem. I'll add some margin to the left of each button. Margin left 10 pixels. Much better. This is optional, but I'm going to change the background color of the body of my document. I will select the body, change the background color. I'll go with a dark gray color. I'll set the lightness to 10%. I'll also take our H1 element and set the font color to be white. I think that looks pretty good, but you don't necessarily need to change the background color if you don't want to. Our CSS is now done. We just have to add some functionality. Let's go back to our to-do list component. We'll begin with add task. After hitting the add button, we'll call this function to add a new task. We have to get the text within this text box. We'll use the setter for set tasks. Pass in a new array. Spread the current elements of tasks. And add our new task, that state variable. We should update this to use an updater function. We will use the previous state of tasks, represented as t. Arrow, spread the previous state of tasks, represented as t. We would like to clear this input element, so we can set new task, set it to be an empty string to reset it. Now we should be able to add a new task. Go to work and add. And that has worked. Eat lunch. Now, if somebody doesn't type in anything, they can still add a task. To prevent that, with an add task, we'll wrap everything within an if statement. Take our new task. Use the trim method to remove any white space. If, after removing any white space, if this is still strictly not equal to an empty string, then add a new task. So now, when I try and add an empty task, it doesn't do anything. Let's add some text. Go to work. And that will work. The add task function is now done. Let's work on delete task. Delete task provides us with an index of the element we would like to delete. Maybe I don't want to take a shower. I'm only a little bit stinky. So within delete task, we will create a new array of updated tasks. So we need to use the filter method. Take our array of tasks, use the filter method. With the filter method, we're provided with an element and each index of that element during each iteration. But we have a naming conflict. We already have a parameter named index for the index we would like to delete. We'll rename index within the filter method as I to differentiate it. Arrow, then a condition. If the current index of I is strictly not equal to the index we would like to delete, put it within our new array of updated tasks. If these two indexes match, we will filter it out. We don't want it, because we want to delete it. Then, once we have our new array of updated tasks, it should be missing that element. Now, we're currently not using this element parameter, even though it's provided to us. A common convention that people do, if a parameter should be ignored, people will change this to an underscore. That's a convention to say, ignore this. We will set our new tasks with our updated tasks. And this is an array that's missing one element, whichever one we filter out using the filter method. Now we should be able to delete an element. I do not want to take a shower. Delete. And I don't feel like going to work. Delete. Delete task is now done. Now we need to be able to move a task up or down using the directional buttons. So let's work on task up. First, let's check to see if our index that's passed in as an argument is greater than 0. If the element is already at the top, we don't need to move it up further. We need to create a new array of updated tasks equals spread the current tasks, and create a new array of updated tasks to work with. Now, we're going to use array destructuring to swap two elements within an array. Here's the formula. We have the current index and the index minus 1. We will be swapping these with index minus 1 and the current index. So take our updated tasks at the current index and the updated tasks at index minus 1, set these equal to updated tasks at index minus 1 and updated tasks at the current index. I do have a separate video on destructuring if you need a refresher. This code will swap two elements within an array. And then we will set our tasks using the setter function. Set tasks, pass in our updated array. And now we should be able to move an element up. Oops, looks like we have two functions for move task up. Move task down. All right, let's see if this works. And now we should be able to move these up. With move task down, we're going to copy everything within move task up. The condition is if our index is less than our task's length property minus 1. If our element is already at the bottom, we don't want to move down any further. Take index plus 1 and then update our tasks. Now we should be able to move tasks up and down and even add new tasks and delete tasks. And of course, to initially have no elements within this array, we can delete all these. So then we start with an empty array. All right, everybody, so that is a somewhat extensive program to create a to-do list application using React.